Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast heard on WABE. I'm Lisa Rayam. So glad to have you here. Today, we're going to talk about this.
I'm fair game. Please stay away from my family.
I hear you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My job goes.
Thank you.
Georgia gubernatorial candidate Keisha Lance Bottoms confronts her opponent Rick Jackson face-to-face about his campaign tactics. This leads to a deeper dive today. How much of this is too much for those heading to the polls come November? Also, how do campaigns decide whether to rebut the claim, attack the messenger, or change the subject? Plus, strategist Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson will weigh in on why Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens is so offended that Atlanta was not picked to host the DNC in 2028. Plus, 2 Democratic sheriffs endorse Rick Jackson. So we have a lot to unpack today. Good day to both of you.
Hey there.
Thank you, Lisa. That is a lot to unpack. A lot going on in Georgia.
Hope y'all had a good weekend.
We did. Yeah, it was hot and was all about around the state. I'm sure B-Rod was as well.
I was going to say, it is the season, isn't it? There's probably no rest for the weary, and that means you too.
Well, I'm actually in New Haven, Connecticut, and I do this once a year. I'll take political breakfast from this hotel because I come up here and do a media training session for Yale students every August, the first week of school. So today is that day. So it's and it was a pleasant high 70s here yesterday, which was a welcome relief.
Yeah, beautiful part of the country there, isn't it?
Yeah, New Haven's not that great, but Connecticut's nice.
Well, B-Rob, you should just go ahead and go over to the vineyard.
That's right. I don't know if I want it there. I don't know if I meet the specifications.
You'll be fine. You guys have had some trackers go over there.
If his timing is right. Yeah, timing is everything. Timing is everything.
I think I'm probably more welcome on Nantucket. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, what he's getting at there is that, don't worry, we'll African Americans, we'll be there probably until mid-September, but then we'll kind of clear out.
As I said, timing is everything, right? Here we are, 72 days until the November midterm election, and the attacks are ramping up. And before we jump into this first topic, I need to point out that, Brian, you work as an advisor for the Rick Jackson campaign, and Tharon advises Keisha Lance Bottoms. Both, as we all know, are running for Georgia governor. The exchange that I alluded to at the top between Bottoms and Jackson took place in a parking lot outside the Hilton Hotel after a National Business League event. She was upset about an ad that targeted her husband. In it, Jackson questions a first-class plane ticket to the Super Bowl purchased during her time as mayor. Brian, you first. So she confronted him about this, saying basically, leave my family alone, specifically her husband. His response was, I hear you.
No, he's saying, I hear you. It doesn't mean that you've persuaded me. Look, I think Democrats have a choice to make here. Either families can be discussed or not, because I certainly see Democrats going nuts about Mike Collins' son-in-law, who, by the way, however offensive or inappropriate or appalling to you his comments may be, is not taking tax dollars, has not been involved in Mike Collins' congressional work or had been speaking on behalf of the Collins campaign. But for weeks, we've heard about Mike Collins' son-in-law. In the case of Keisha Lance Bottoms' husband, what was at issue were actual tax dollars. And I know what Tharon's going to say, that they paid it back. That's great. But tax dollars were used, and that is a public-facing issue, and that is something that's legitimate in a campaign. If your family benefits from your position in office, that is a legitimate thing to discuss in a campaign. I think that Rick Jackson was being very polite in that interchange. He said he liked her outfit. So he was, that is the guy that I see on the campaign trail, somebody who's nice to those around him, and it was demonstrated there. And I thought, look, she said what she wanted to say, and I thought she did it in a professional manner as well. So that's all.
Was he caught off guard though? He seemed a little caught off guard to me.
Well, certainly the earlier interchange, which was at the congressional lunch where Tharon interviewed Keisha and I interviewed Rick, was very polite. So anytime somebody's confrontational, it's not what you expect in that moment. I don't think he was expecting that. But I did find it odd that there was a staffer there at the ready with a camera up videoing it. It kind of gave me the sense of a staged for social media purposes interaction. And Uh, yes, one of Rick Jackson's staffers, one of my colleagues there, was recording it as well, but it obviously was not for social media purposes because they didn't post it. So it just seemed a little staged and intended for, it was a staged confrontation, is my takeaway from it. And as such, I just didn't think it was that great of an idea. And I don't think it really landed with the public.
Tharon, what is your response? Was it staged? Was this the right response, in your opinion? Some say it was the wrong response, and maybe she should have just changed the subject and walked away and kind of ignored it. But what's your take on this?
Lisa, I'm hearing the exact opposite. And I think that's not a good characterization of what happened. So let me run this down for our listeners. They were at the National Business League speech. Rick Jackson spoke earlier that morning, Lisa, somewhere around 9:15 or 9:30, and he waited for her to arrive. Okay, he waited. So Keisha pulls up. She's in the car and she's preparing for her speaks and her remarks. And when she exits the car, Rick Jackson and his campaign and his all his staffers and his security walks towards her. And I want to make sure that we characterize this in the right way. It wasn't confrontational. She didn't confront him. It was an exchange of two professionals, and she was extremely polite. Now, what she did say was she called him Mr. Jackson. This part is not in the video. And she said, Mr. Jackson, and he said, yes. And that's when you said, hey, you know what? I'm fair game. I'm fair game. You can talk about me on the campaign, but can you leave my family out of this? And the other thing I want to correct politely is that Rick Jackson's campaign got the entire footage as well. So it was not staged. Matter of fact, I think the staffers for Keisha Lance Bottoms' campaign were actually kind of taken off guard for two reasons, Lisa. Number one, Rick Jackson was waiting on Keisha Lance Bottoms to come into this hotel to speak. She spoke after him. What I think probably surprised him pleasantly and probably shocked him, because you're right, he did look pretty startled, is that she politely went up to him in a very calm and direct way and said what she said. So it wasn't a confrontation, it was not staged, and this is not something that she had concocted. He waited on her. Had he left when he was supposed to, or I mean, he can stay around as long as he wants to. That's the first thing I want to talk about. Second thing I want to address is that the ads that the mayor are referring to is the lies that the Rick Jackson campaign is saying that taxpayers' dollars were used to pay for this ticket. They always leave out this important part, Lisa. It was for the Super Bowl. She had just become mayor. It was one of her first big trips. The staff booked the ticket. When she immediately found out the ticket was booked, she corrected the error. She said, you can't do that. I will pay the money back. Don't do that. Book him another ticket. They leave that part out. So the fact that taxpayers' dollars were not used is because Keisha Lance Bottoms, shortly thereafter, Lisa wrote a check back to the city. So I want everyone to hear me in the city of Atlanta. Your tax dollars were not used for Derek Bottoms to go to the Super Bowl with Keisha Lance Bottoms, which, by the way, she was there on her official duty. And then the last thing I would say is, Lisa, when you have this much money that's being dropped on television with just negative, false ads, and you're talking about the family, let me give you the difference between Mike Collins and Derek Bottoms. Derek Bottoms has said zero about Rick Jackson. He didn't say anything about anybody during the primary. And matter of fact, he don't make political statements. Mike Collins' son-in-law has previously made some statements. John Ossoff called him out, Lisa. But here's the ticker. This is what my good friend B. Rob left off. The reason we're still talking about the son-in-law's comments and his ties to white nationalist groups is because he just last week did another post. So he is actually doing exactly what the Ossoff team wants him to do, which is to continue the posting. Derek Bottoms has did nothing. So therein lies where you lie on him about the ticket. And then the other thing, and I'll close, is the biggest issue that we have is that when do we start utilizing campaign ads, negative ads, when you call out somebody's employer? They're calling out Home Depot, which is a Georgia-based company that Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus founded. And this man has worked his butt off, Lisa, to get this high-paying, well-merit-based job at Home Depot. And to infer and to say the employer's name on the air and to now talk about where he works and try to make a false claim about boycotts, therein lies where I think most people who are listening here, folks tell me like, hey, families, fair game and others. But no, not when you start attacking someone's husband false claims about a ticket, but also mentioning their employers. One thing that people care about in the CEOs and big companies, they care about their money, but more important, they care about their brand. And I think Rick Jackson is tarnishing the Home Depot brand by going after them about a false claim about a boycott. And so I just want to kind of quickly explain to why Keisha Lance Bottoms calmly had to ask Rick Jackson politely, hey, I'm fair game, but leave my family out of this.
Yeah. So both sides, as we know, have launched attack ads, and it could lead to dangerous territory, right? So I don't know. Is there any sense that these ads are working for either candidate? Brian, you first.
Well, we're still in the very, very early stages, and so we're beginning to see these messengers begin to seep in. I think by the early September, you will see them making a difference. Already you've seen Rick Jackson close what had been, you would see Keisha leading somewhere just outside of the margin of error. You now see it in a dead heat. So it's not a huge movement, but there's not going to be huge movement in Georgia politics. The Jersey numbers are too evenly spread out for there to be a massive switch in the polling numbers. But you have seen them close a little bit. And this is going to be a game of inches in Georgia, as it always is. And so that movement does matter. It is significant. And of course, you can see the difference between Rick Jackson and Keisha Lance Bottoms' race, how tight it is compared to other races on the statewide ballot, where there's a little more distance, where you see the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, having more of an impact on some of the other Republicans who don't have the resources to go and tell their story. I will wrap up real quickly on the other issue. As far as the Derek Bottoms ticket goes, there were media reports of it at the time. So it's not just the Rick Jackson campaign saying that this is a public import and the public has a right to know. There were contemporaneous news segments that are shown in that ad, and that speaks for itself. And as for the businesses, all that came about because Keisha Lance Bottoms, when Rick Jackson went to Black-owned restaurants, did a video where she basically said, these people have it coming if the businesses get boycotted. That was the underlying message of what she said. And the point was, boycotting businesses is not okay. That is not the way to respond to political speech. And, it's all well and good until it's your family, until it's your business. And that's the point that was being made, and it's a fair point.
Lisa, if I can quickly respond to your question, but also respond to B-Rob in a very civil way, and we're going to be polite, like Rick Jackson and Keisha Lance Bottoms was when they interacted. I just want to tell the facts. The facts is that the story that Brian is referencing it was done 6 months after the January date and when all this stuff occurred. And the reason the story came up is because some of her opponents, people who wanted to bring it up, actually brought it up later on. But what the part that the Rick Jackson campaign will not tell the folks is that even in those ads and those reports, they came back later on and said, nope, you know what? Mayor Bottoms actually repaid the money. There was even a comment about how do you expect her to get around? She's a mayor. She has to get transportation. She needs to go there to support and bring the Super Bowl. And the other thing that the stories came out and said is that the money was reimbursed. And then she went on to do something that was very monumental. Lisa, she came up with the first open checkbook policy. This woman got an award for being the most transparent mayor. And remember, we were coming after the previous administration where people were under investigation. The FBI was literally camped out at City Hall. And so this was a woman that had to deal with a lot of transparency issues and ethics issues that were not caused by her. But are the negative ads working? We're leading this race right now, and B-Rob knows that, and it's public polling and it's an internal polling. We've had now 4 to 5 polls that have all showed that Keisha Lance Bottoms is in the lead. The most recent one we had was showing them neck and neck. The negative impact of the polling from the Rick Jackson campaign when they spent over $10 million. Lisa Rayam, we love you to death. But guess what? If somebody spends $10 million saying bad things about you on television, your numbers are going to go down. What we're inspired about is that while we have started positive on our campaign, we started with 2 to 3 positive ads. Yes, we've had to hit back, but we don't have the money that Rick Jackson has. This guy has committed to spending $87 million. And so we're the underdog in this race. But what is resonating, Lisa, is that when she's in Northwest Georgia and people are coming up to her and they're talking about their high grocery costs, they're really resonating with her playing around, not just Medicaid expansion, but dealing with rural hospitals and how they're closing. At a time where premiums were going up in this state, Rick Jackson and his company was making a lot of money. They want good public education, they want affordability, and they want responsible growth in these areas. And so we feel that the positivity that we're talking about when we're out on the stump is resonating. However, the negative ads just a monumental. I mean, we're getting outspent almost 10-1. We do have to respond and defend yourself. And the last thing I'll say is Keisha Lance Bottoms watched 3 to 4 Republicans be destroyed by Rick Jackson in the primary, and she's not going to let that happen to her. She's going to stand up for herself, and she's going to push back on all of these negative false ads that are being displayed against her.
Yeah, in the midst of all of this, we have 2 Democratic sheriffs, though, endorsing Rick Jackson. Brian, your response first. Tharon, you next.
Yeah, and those 2 Democrat sheriffs join nearly 100 Republican sheriffs. We have over 100 sheriffs that have endorsed Rick Jackson in this campaign. And I think that it does demonstrate one of the dividing lines here in this contest, in that Keisha Lance Bottoms' record on public safety is one that leaves a lot to be desired. And people in Atlanta remember it. And that's why Keisha Lance Bottoms did much better in the primary in the counties outside of Metro Atlanta, where people weren't as familiar with her record as mayor in Atlanta. For those in Fulton County and DeKalb and Clayton, Cobb, Gwinnett, they were in this media market. They saw it play out, and they know that's not what they want for their communities. And so you see law enforcement rallying behind Rick Jackson because, during the Bottoms' tenure as mayor, there was a blame police first, fire police without due process rule in effect. And many of those officers were later reinstated because they were just fired willy-nilly, essentially, based on the demands of the Twitter mob. That's not how we want to see governance. And when you lead that way, you leave a vacuum behind that criminals will fill. And I do think that became a big part of how Atlantans and Metro Atlantans, even beyond the city's borders, remember her tenure as mayor. So I think that these sheriffs are indicative of more to come. I think you're going to hear more from law enforcement speaking out in this race, saying it can't be Keisha Lance Bottoms, and we trust Rick Jackson to lead with a law and order style. And for Democrats to cross the line, I think brings a little more spotlight to it. I think it is relevant that these are a handful of Democrats doing this. And of course, there's Billy Linville, a prominent Atlanta Democrat who is now leading independents and Democrats for Jackson. And what that is important to remind people, even if you're voting for Democrats up and down the ballot, that in the governor's race, it's important to vote for Rick Jackson because of the contrast in this particular race.
Do you think this goes hand in hand? We've got Jackson Healthcare being accused of trafficking immigrant nurses, a lawsuit being filed there. I don't know. How does that factor into all of this? Brian?
Jackson Healthcare is a healthcare staffing company, and the immigrant nurses that are used are filling a critical need in Georgia and across the country. It is something that we have to serve the patient needs throughout the United States. We have way fewer nurses than what we need to serve this domestic audience. So Rick Jackson has a program that brings some in, and the attack on him is he's against illegal immigration in his primary ads. Well, of course he is. These are coming in through the American legal process. That is how it's being done. It is all being done above board. The company has settled the lawsuit because it doesn't want to deal with the cost of litigation. It does not agree with the merits of the case. It is not admitting that the allegations are accurate. The fact is they followed the law. They did it right. They settled it so that they can not waste money on litigation and refocus on serving healthcare needs. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the way that they handled this, and there's nothing inconsistent with his political messages that are always about legal immigration versus illegal immigration. And we're going to take a hard stand on illegal immigration. And one of the ads talks about the need to not just assimilate, but to say to people coming in, you don't have the right to impose your culture, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing inconsistent with that.
All right, Tharon, you jump in here on both with the Democratic sheriffs.
A lot to unpack there. Let me go back to the sheriffs. we live in a Republican sort of purple state. I believe we're in a purple state. We're a battleground state. But Lisa, when you get outside of the metro area, a lot of these women and men who are sheriffs, they actually are a little bit more Republican, but some of them are Democrats. And not to disown these two sheriffs who decided to go on the other side, but I also just got to call balls and strikes here. One of them is kind of what we call a soft Democrat, Lisa. Let me explain to you what a soft Democrat is. You know, me, I'm a hardline, strong Democrat. I vote in every single election. I'm sure my voter record has been pulled a lot. But these soft Democrats in these rural areas, they go back and forth. Sometimes they vote in Republican primary, sometimes they vote in Democratic primary. Then one particular sheriff also, we have confirmed, and I've talked to many sources, that actually has voted consistently in Republican primaries. And so I just want our viewers to know that when they come out and say these Democratic sheriffs are sheriffs, I mean, if they said they are, that's great, but I just want you to look at their voting history. But then when you look at Keisha Lance Bottoms' record on law enforcement, the one thing I want the Rick Jackson campaign to remind voters is that when they're negatively attacking her, what I've been told by people who are currently on the Atlanta Police Department and others that have retired, this is what they've told me, Lisa. They say, you know what? Thank you, Keisha Lance Bottoms, for giving me the largest pay increase that any mayor in the history of Atlanta gave me. And also she did it for the firefighters. So this whole thing about being weak on law enforcement is just not true. It was a very unfortunate time in our country. It was a very challenging time in our city. Keisha Lance Bottoms did the best that she absolutely could do with the resources that she was given. But I just want our viewers and listeners to know that she showed up for law enforcement by giving them the largest pay raise that they've ever received in the city of Atlanta's history. Now on to this lawsuit. B-Rob is doing a lot of explaining there, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because there's more to come about that story, Lisa. But what really happened here was that these people were sold a dream that didn't come true. They were sold a dream that they were going to come over to this country and work for Jackson Healthcare. Clearly, the conditions were not conducive to what they thought they were going to be. Clearly, there were some things that they literally were so upset about and things that happened that literally it led to them filing a lawsuit. They settled. And most times when you settle, it doesn't necessarily always mean that you're admitting total guilt, but that means that there was some there, Lisa. And so I just want our listeners to know that at a time where this man is running because he wants to be just like Trump with a Southern tone, he wants to be Donald Trump's favorite governor. And he's saying that I am a billionaire just like Donald Trump. And right now we know there's an anti-billionaire sentiment out there, and the people of Georgia are suffering because of this Trump agenda. And the common thread here between Donald Trump and Rick Jackson are bad business practices. These are stories that are coming out one by one. He also told us that he was not going to renew any more contracts. He told us that he was going to unwind. He said he wanted to show us the highest level of integrity by not showing any impropriety. We saw that y'all talked about this last week that he renewed a contract while he told us he was not going to do it anymore. And so these business practices, because he's running on a pro-business platform, more to come. And I think you're going to see more and more stories come out like this. But it was just really unfortunate what happened to these nurses. Many of them were told that they were going to have an environment to be in. They filed a lawsuit. It got settled. And then also I'm hearing that there is more to come about the working conditions and some of the things that happened, particularly during COVID and other things as well. So you know, look, it's a very tough time for the voters to try to decide who is going to be best for them. But I truly believe that if you look at where we're going and who has the best plan for you when it comes to affordable health care, who has a record of actually delivering for small businesses, for education, and making sure that everyone has a seat at the table, being inclusive, I think voters are going to cut through the noise of all the negativity, the millions of dollars that's going to be spent. Right? Maybe it'll get up to $1 billion. But I think that voters want to make sure that they elect the person that's going to help them, that's going to be very Georgia specific. And I think that person is Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Real quickly there, because he mentioned the contract that Jackson Healthcare has with the state. First of all, Jackson Healthcare is routinely voted as one of the best places in Georgia to work. They take great care of their employees, and there is huge employee satisfaction within the company. So take it with a grain of salt when the campaign says that employees aren't treated well. But when it comes to the state contract, he did not say that he was going to not renew. what he said was he is not going to renew if he is elected governor. And as he pointed out in his news conference last week, he has not been elected governor. If he is, he said last Thursday that he will the next day begin to unwind. There's a 30-day out, and that by December the 31st, there'll be no Jackson healthcare contracts with the state. That is in line with what he has said consistently all along. And he has also gone further to say not only will he not do business with the state, he will not even do business in the state because he doesn't want even the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Real quick, Lisa, I think this was should have happened. And I'm glad you brought that up, B-Rob. And Andre, shout out to my dog who did a good job last week. If he knew he said that he was not going to renew any if he was elected, then he's got millions of dollars and he's paying all of his staff a lot of money. Then why didn't someone say, hey, Rick Jackson, you may want to come out and say, I'm not going to renew this contract that is up for renewal because I just told the people that I was not going to renew it if I was elected governor. Instead, Lisa, we uncovered it, right? We had the media had to report it rather than him saying, you know what, this contract is coming up. I'm going to make a decision on it. Or he could have said, you know what, I don't want to renew. Or, okay, I'm only going to renew because of this. But point is, Lisa, had we not discovered it, had we not talked about it on this political breakfast podcast and the media hadn't uncovered it, I don't think we would have ever known. And so therein lies the conflict. Therein lies the lack of transparency. He was not forthcoming about it because he said what he said, B-Rob, but then he could have said, hey, this is coming up for renewal. And I'm going to renew it, but only because I'm contractually obligated to do so. There was none of that. Instead, the story comes out, and now he's walking it back and saying that I was only going to do it if I'm elected. And I think that's unfair to Georgia voters because Georgia voters are trying to get the best information they can that's available to them right now.
I think business people would be shocked to learn that Jackson Healthcare gets 1.5% in admin fees for those contracts. 98.5% go directly into patient care.
I think Georgia voters are going to be shocked to learn about how he hires these nurses and then jacks up the price and gives them back to the hospitals. They end up having to pay double than they were paying before they left to go to Jackson Healthcare. I think that's going to be the thing that Georgia voters are going to be surprised to know as well.
All right. I think you both can agree, though, that this is an issue that won't go away and it'll probably come up again. Jackson and Bottoms scheduled for one televised debate, possibly two. We'll see what materializes there. Let's take a break. And when we return, Mayor Andre Dickens feels that Atlanta got snubbed. The Democratic National Convention will not be coming to Atlanta in 2028. We'll hear their thoughts. Brian and Tharon coming up after the break. Welcome back to Political Breakfast. We're talking about a whole lot today. We're going to move on now to plans for the 2028 Democratic National Convention. Atlanta did not make the final cut to host the DNC, and Mayor Andre Dickens is mad. Tharon, does he have a right to be?
Absolutely. I support the mayor. The letter was truthful. It was scathing. The mayor has been really on point here lately, Lisa, with releasing these letters. And it was very disappointing because I know how much effort the mayor and everyone put into trying to persuade, again, the DNC convention to come to Georgia. I fundamentally agree with everything the mayor said, but I'll take it a step further. You know, he focused on us being a concentration of the most loyal demographic of voters, and that is black voters to the Democratic Party nationally. And I totally agree with him on that. But I also agree with his point in the letter where he says that we are the jewel of the New South, right? We're the jewel of the New Southeast. And so everything goes to Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta is doing our thing on a national level. I mean, we're creating new jobs. We're dealing with issues around public safety. We're expanding transit as much as we possibly can. You know, he's focusing on affordability. And so it was really, to me, a direct connection to what Democrats should be talking about nationally. The other thing, Lisa, is that I truly believe that the growth is coming towards the South. I mean, you say what you want to say about this governor's race. It is the most watched governor's race. And I think B-Rob would agree with me on that, is that he's honored and I'm honored to be actually involved in this campaign because it is the number one governor's race, I believe, in the country. And then if you look at what's going on in Florida and other places and how there's growth in Carolina, we got Roy Cooper, who's running for U.S. Senate. It was just a bad mistake from the DNC. Now, let's get into the other cities. I mean, whatever they decide, Democrats will all fall in line and will be supportive. But the best way to answer what the DNC did is for us to go and reelect John Ossoff and elect Keisha Lance Bottoms as governor, because the momentum and the demographics are on our side. All the growth that we're seeing in this country is coming to the South. We have 2 Democratic U.S. senators. We have a Democratic candidate for governor who's leading. We have an amazing ticket of folks who are running. We have a congressional delegation that is thriving. We have to make sure we protect Sanford Bishop in his seat. So I just don't know why it didn't happen. But ultimately, what I would encourage all the Democrats that are listening to this podcast is, yes, the mayor has set the tone. Let's be upset. Let's figure out why it didn't happen. But more importantly, let's transfer that energy to voting. Transfer all that energy to voting up and down the ticket for Democrats. And ultimately, so I believe that we will, sooner than later, get this convention back here in Georgia. I didn't realize it's been, since 1988?
88.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's just so disappointing. But yeah, shout out to the mayor for doing what he's doing. But hey, guys, let's redirect that energy and all that anger and excitement. Let's make sure we go out and vote in droves in a few weeks here when early voting starts.
So, it's odd to me that Democrats have skipped out on Georgia for 40 years. All the other cities that they're considering have held Democrat conventions since Atlanta has.
Yeah.
And so,
it's a battleground state and a very important state now. So,
and I think one of the things, it's not for me to say this. I am not a Democrat. Obviously, it is not in my interest or my desire for Democrats to do well. But one argument the Democrats are making that Andre Dickens made quite well and quite fervently, there's a lot of passion in what he wrote, I thought it was pretty well done, is this is the place where you have really the center of Black American life. And this is huge to it. And of course, that is one of the huge foundations of the Democratic coalition is Black voters. I must point out that we Republicans are trying to break up that coalition and get some of those voters to come be in our tent with us.
You sure are.
We are, man. Yes. I mean, we can read
Black men, yes.
Yeah, man, they got me out here working, Lisa.
I know, man.
Hey, I got to defend ourselves.
Yeah. Tharon is a highly desired demographic as far as both parties are concerned. And, and I would say the white people in my neighborhood, I can tell you they've been targeted by Democrats too, because,
I love me some Brookhaven white women.
The only signs in my neighborhood, besides my Jackson sign, and by the way, if you live in National Park, I'm happy to bring you a Jackson sign. Just kidding. I don't do grassroots. But is Ossoff sign. So you see Democrats competing for this white college-educated voter and Republicans competing for Black voters. And that's exactly why Atlanta is a great spot for both parties to come. We have large numbers of both of those groups, and they are being targeted. They are at the center of national discussion and will play a big role in which party remains in power or comes into power. So I think it's a missed opportunity for the Democrats. As a Georgia Republican, I don't particularly want the Democrats here trying to make inroads and doing events here and presumably getting Democrat voters excited. At the same time, as a Georgia taxpayer, I don't like that we're missing the revenue that comes with these conventions, the attention given to our fantastic venues in Midtown and downtown and around the metro area, and the hotel motel tax, the car rental tax, all of that benefits all of us. So I want conventions to come here. I have mixed feelings, however, on this one, because I like the Democrats giving the snub to Georgia because I think it's good for me. And I'll end with this. I wish Republicans would come here.
I was going to say
they cannot take Georgia for granted. And you're hearing Tharon say that. You're hearing me say that. This is up for grabs. This is a jump ball here in Georgia. And I feel like both parties are missing an opportunity to come be here and talk to Georgians and be on the ground.
I was going to say, with all the money being spent by the Jackson campaign, the GOP does not seem to focus on Georgia either right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, they're not coming here in 2028. And I think it's a mistake. I think we as Atlanta should be on the map for the Republicans and for the Democrats.
Well, real quick, Lisa, to B. Rob's point, the three remaining cities are Boston, Philadelphia, and Denver. Denver, we were there in 2008. Philly, I mean, we should be able to win Pennsylvania. I know how hard Pennsylvania is for us. And then, okay, Boston, Massachusetts, we're going to win Massachusetts, right? I
Right.
mean, like,
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's take Massachusetts out of it, Lisa. So then it's really us, Philly, and Denver. Well, Georgia, again, as B. Rob just talked about, is that we're in a battleground state. Like, you win Georgia in 26, then the presidency at a time where we just moved South Carolina up in the Democratic primary order in 2028. If I'm running for president of the United States of America, I would have actually wanted Georgia to be moved, to be the convention, because it's basically a prelude to me going next door to South Carolina. So while I'm here for the convention, if I'm running for president, I can just scoot over to South Carolina because that's going to be the proposed new first state in there. And then the other thing I want to say about black voters, and I'm going to say this as a black voter because, Lisa, I want to win. Building a winning coalition, we can't get trapped into just always talking about black voters. Now, I'm saying this as a black male voter who votes as a strong Democrat. I'm a super voter Democrat. But in order for us to win Georgia, we got to build a winning coalition. And that winning coalition is a mixture of rural, urban, gay, straight, labor, corporate, small businesses, large businesses, agriculture, dealing with transit, all these different things, public safety. And so that when you look at it from that lens, I know the mayor agrees with me on this, is that, yeah, let's snap on them. Let's go off because, all those things that we are as Atlanta. But in order to win Georgia, you got to build a multi-generational and multicultural winning coalition. And that is going to continue to be my stance, that we got to bring everyone to the table. Because we know if people go out and vote in the numbers that they're supposed to vote with the registered voters we have here, Lisa, Democrats will win in November. But we can't just always go to just black voter base, which I'm all for. Obviously, I live it every day. But in order to win, I want to say this publicly on this podcast. Let's expand our winning coalition. Let's expand our thinking and make sure that everyone is a part of the team.
Well, we don't know why Atlanta was eliminated, but DNC Chair Ken Martin said we put up an incredibly strong bid. So that's all that's being said.
And this is the thing I would tell Chairman Martin. And, look, I kind of need him right now because, we're in a fight. We're going against a billionaire I think I've said it, 8 times, B-Rob. So we're going against a billionaire who has unlimited resources, an RNC that has a lot of money. The DNC doesn't have as much money. But Lisa, listen, we could have actually just made the short list. I think that was the one thing I think the mayor's like, come on, bro. Like, all right, we may not make it because last year we know Chicago got it. Pritzker cut the check. This time we should have at least made the short list. But to eliminate us from the short list, I think therein lies why the mayor was just so upset.
I bet you Democrat delegates to the convention are upset too because Atlanta's a pretty fun place for nightlife and it's a great destination and I don't think anybody would be as excited about the other locations in my opinion. Of course, I'm a little biased toward my state, but when you look at what's in play, it's us, it's North Carolina to some degree. It leans more red than us. Wisconsin, not a lot of great locations there. I mean, Milwaukee's not going to be the best draw. I like Milwaukee, but not the best draw. Philadelphia, yeah, that's okay. But you're right. Tharon's right. It leans R now too. Denver, Colorado, solid blue. When you start doing it, Massachusetts, solid blue. When you look at it like this, Atlanta makes a whole lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think it's a mistake, but I think the flip side is true as well. It is just as good of a place for Republicans to come. And I wish they would. And, maybe Democrats are not wanting to give John Ossoff, a future presidential candidate, a home field advantage, that favorite son advantage. I know Ossoff says he's not running, but his social media feed and the video clips and all of that certainly suggests somebody who's got a wide horizon ahead of them.
All right, we'll leave it on that note there. Boy, sorted through a lot today. Thanks, guys, for your perspective as always, and let's do it again next week.
Just shout out, thank you so much to our listeners, Lisa. When I'm out and about, too many people to name. You guys come up to me And B-Rob, I have given you tremendous name recognition with this nickname, man. So y'all got to come up with a nickname for me because I can't tell you, Lisa, how many people brag on you, Lisa, but this thing, B-Rob.
I know.
B-Rob.
Yeah. No, it is true, and it is. Now, granted, B-Rob was something my best friend in high school called me too, and then it was dormant for 40 years, and then Tharon picked it up.
Tharon brought it back, resurrected it.
But it is. I will say, it was Tharon, his creation, in the sense that is why I get stopped in Publix and called B-Rob. I get stopped at church, at Costco, wherever I am. It's because of Tharon, and I'm pretty cool with it. It's nice to have a brand.
All right, B-Rob, Tharon. See you next week.
See ya.